Justice. Such a loaded word and laced with such distrust. But you and I can make a difference, my Marvel Champions friends. Sleeve up some yellow bordered cards and straighten up this joint. My name is Benji, and this is the guide to the staple cards and archetypes of the Justice aspect. With the release of the Sinister Motives Deluxe expansion, the thwartiest of cards got a shot in the arm. So let's do this. But before commencement, please do the subscribe and the likey. Thanking you. So archetypes are not a dime a dozen in the Justice, because ultimately threat removal is not a win condition, it's a we will not lose condition. But that's not to say you're pigeonholed either. This little piggy's got a few tricks up its sleeve, rest assured. First up then is the designated thwarter build, with all your straightforward threat removal. Useful for when you're playing that role in multiplayer, but also useful in accompaniment with an identity that's got a particularly aggressive damage dealing signature 15. This is where Sense of Justice, Heroic Intuition and Quinn Carrier or equivalent can provide a platform not just for this type of build, but anything we'll talk about today. Sense of Justice is a card mirrored in the other aspects and does exactly what you want it to, giving you more free space to do multiple things on your turn. Heroic Intuition is what Heroic Intuition does, and Quinn Carrier also does its talking all on the card. But then we get to the true meat and potatoes of threat removal, with Lay Down the Law, Impede and Clear the Area, that each in their own different way reward sequencing. Lay Down the Law is sweet value, and I don't normally sing the praises of form changing cards, but with Justice you can afford a breather in alter ego form, more than you can with other aspects. And so here, especially with its synergy for mental resources with Sense of Justice, you can do your thwart thing and your damage thing all in one go. Impede is similar in that it should net out 3 threat removal for 1 net bean, and at 2 resources you shouldn't need to bin the other cards in your hand you want to play, so job's a good un. And Clear the Area is usually a fairly easy proc. If not on the main scheme, there's bound to be a side scheme hanging around like a bad smell that needs attending to. That then brings us to the allies that's main priority is of the thwart variety. Speed, Eros and Venom. Speed is just an all-star, removing 8 threat over 2 turns, which would probably be overkill as a one-shot, or you can get 6 threat out of him and throw him under the bus for the still value cost of 4 rubles. Yes, I will take my green Quicksilver to the bank. Eros brings more sweet collaboration with mental resources as you can confuse the shizzle out of Minion Town and do some respectable thwarting whilst you're at it. And Venom forces you to meet the conditional requirement, else it's lackluster, but ensuring you've got your foot on the main scheme, this is gonna work for you, unlike most allies that will see table time. So there you have your key cards for All I Do Is Thwarting, but don't worry, we're gonna cover the best of the rest later. But for now we move on to our Control archetype, where you channel your inner Gandalf and just straight up stop the bad things from happening. Which is where Under Surveillance, Sonic Rifle and Concussive Blow come into their own. Under Surveillance is your safety valve that you never think you're going to need, especially in solo play. And Sonic Rifle is decent enough in isolation and can still be used as damage in niche situations. But seriously, don't sleep on 2 confused statuses, especially if you like to jolly back to alter ego more than your average bear. And its cousin Concussive Blow goes from pretty naff to pretty great, so long as you've got access to those wild resources. Which means Quinn Carrier or equivalent or a deck that just so happens to be stocked with physical icons is the way to go. You've then got your more reactive suite of cards with Foiled, Counterintelligence and Beat Cop, all doing their thing, and with the former giving you a probable average of -2 threat for the cost of the card itself, enough said, and Counterintelligence being a tier 2 card, but one you're more than happy to have, especially when the burst on some boost icons or what the encounter deck throws at you isn't kind. It's also got that built-in love fest with Agent Coulson, which is an ally you always need to consider when bringing preparation cards. And then you have the one, the only beat cop, who does her thing, does it without fuss, and brings another means to deal with a problem you may or may not have been prepared for. All good things come to those that wait. As we segue to our third archetype, you might be surprised to see that Allies Swarm is a possibility. Of course, Justice doesn't have the means to expand your ally pool, but there's always the basic tribal cards like Avenger's Tower and Nowhere if you can make them work. But what we're talking about here doesn't rely on either of those things, because Wiccan, Eros and Monica Chang all do good things with a lowly cost to boot. Wiccan, of course, you can whiff on, but over the course of those 3 activations, it's highly unlikely you're not going to see significant return on investment. Eros, we've already talked about, is both a good ally and a cheap one, and Monica Chang is synergistically sweet in all the right ways. Her stat line is of course as underwhelming as an empty pack of sweets, but with a free surveillance team +1, or maybe even more if you go all in on the people with headphones, this is a really solid low cost ally. But because you're looking for a critical mass of allies, you'll need to lean on the basic pool as well, which is where Nick Fury and Ironheart come in, and maybe even a Mockingbird. Nick Fury is here to do whatever you need of him, and it's why he's such a popular card, even now this many sets in. And Ironheart might not do a huge amount, but that makes 2 allies that can help you cycle the deck. And Mockingbird then is still the little core set card that could. We then move to the dual threat archetype, where balance and harmony meet and have justice babies. The idea is to have only one foot in the thwarting door, and the other in the punch face hallway. Thank the yellow bordered gods then that allies like Daredevil and Jack Flag and the evergreen Wiccan are in the card pool. Obviously Daredevil only drawback is his cost, the rest is the definition of proactive. Keep on top of threat and provide some chip damage. Useful not just for ticking over, but dealing with toughness as well. And Jack Flag splits his goodies straight down the middle, and does so with aplomb. And Wiccan is Wycan, and no, I've got nothing. We then move to Event Town with Turn the Tide, Stealth Strike and Making an Entrance, bringing all sorts of dual action goodness, with the former being the sort of damage dealer that sequencing dreams are made for, and this should fairly easy proc, and so 3 damage for free is where it's at. And Stealth Strike doesn't provide quite the same output for cost, but it's another way to do 2 things at once. You've then got Making an Entrance, which you certainly do with this card. Although it's not really dual threat, is it, Benj? Look, if you're going to be that pedantic, then you don't understand how living for longer means you can dole out more damage. Div. And that was your 4 main archetypes, but there's more than a few cards that don't necessarily align with any of the above, but are too good to not fill out the remainder of your deck. And the first few batches fall into the side scheme eating category, with allies like Quasar and Jessica Jones scaling considerably with a side scheme or 2 in play. Quasar is passable without the enter the battlefield ability, but the removal of 2 or more threats sends him over the top, and Jessica Jones becomes a real dual threat under the right circumstances. You've then got events like the double whammy of one way or another and multitasking, with the former getting major economy and card draw from fetching a side scheme, and multitasking providing a wonderful outlet for killing 2 birds with 1 stone. And the fun doesn't stop there, because upgrades like Skilled Investigator and Followed give solid payouts and ultimately value payouts for tackling side schemes. What's more, Skilled Investigator scales even greater with side scheme heavy scenarios and in tandem with one way or another. Moving away from scheming, you've then got some cards that scale really well for multiplayer in Quake, Crisis Averted and Great Responsibility. Quake giving you that something extra when there's minions abound. Crisis Averted is good value but generally overkill in solo play, and Great Responsibility is nominally useless in solo but would go to work in counter decks when there's more than one identity at the table. which leaves just an outgoing mention to some tribal cards of note in Think Fast, Running Interference and Problem Solvers. Oh, Rocket proves that good things can come in small packages. Running Interference scales well in both multiplayer and higher difficulty levels, and Problem Solvers is very much your build around and situational card all wrapped into one. But with the right hero comp and the right scenario, this is the potential to do so much work, even for the combined 4 resources you need for it. But that's your lot. There is nothing else I wish to show you. I very much hope you've been informed by this run through of Justice Archetypes and Staples. Is there anything you think was a glaring omission on my part, or have you had success with any other archetypes? Let me know in the comments. Alas, I have been the voice of Benji, and this video has ended.